The year is 117 AD. A single, unified economic zone stretches from the misty borders of Scotland to the sun-scorched sands of Saudi Arabia, encompassing the entire Mediterranean in a web of trade, law, and currency. This was the Roman Empire at its peak, a colossus we remember for its legions, its emperors, and its epic fall. But what if we've been looking at it all wrong? What if the most mind-blowing thing about Rome wasn't just its military conquests, but the sheer, staggering size of its economy? We often think of the ancient world as a place of subsistence farming and simple barter, a prelude to the real history of the Industrial Revolution. But what if I told you that for centuries, the Roman Empire possessed the most powerful and sophisticated economy the world would ever see until the dawn of the modern era? This isn't just about counting coins in a dusty temple. This is about uncovering an economic powerhouse that rivaled the output of powerful nations in our own time. The question, what was the Roman GDP, might sound like a dry academic exercise, but the answer is a number so counterintuitive and so astonishing that it forces us to completely rewrite our understanding of ancient potential. How do you even calculate the gross domestic product of a civilization that fell over 1,500 years ago? Without tax returns or central bank reports, historians and economists have to become forensic accountants for a dead civilization. They scour the writings of contemporaries like Pliny the Elder, who complained about the massive wealth flowing out to India for silk and spices. They analyze archaeological evidence, the sheer volume of olive oil amphorae from Spain found at the bottom of the Mediterranean, the scale of ancient silver mines in Spain that operated for centuries, the tax records preserved on papyri in the dry sands of Egypt. The groundbreaking work of economists like Angus Maddison has given us our best possible guess. And the figure they've arrived at isn't just a statistic. It's a key that unlocks a new perspective on the ancient world, revealing a level of economic integration and productivity that would not be seen again in Europe for over a millennium. So, let's dive in and discover the true scale of Rome's economy, a story of wealth and complexity that will change the way you see history forever. What was the single most powerful economy on Earth before the Industrial Revolution? Was it the glittering courts of the Mughal Empire overflowing with jewels? The mighty Ming dynasty with its vast fleets and porcelain? Or perhaps the kingdoms of medieval Europe with their castles and cathedrals? The answer might surprise you. For centuries, the title of the world's dominant economy belonged to a civilization that had already crumbled into dust over 1,500 years ago. We know the Roman Empire for its legions, the unstoppable military machine that conquered the known world. We know it for its emperors, the mad, the brilliant, the tyrannical. We marvel at its ruins, the Colosseum, the Pantheon, the aqueducts that still stand as silent monuments to its engineering genius. But we rarely, if ever, think of Rome in terms of its economy. We picture togas and temples, not supply chains and gross domestic product. We think of gladiators, not GDP. This is the story we almost never tell. So, let's ask the seemingly impossible question. What was the Roman GDP? How do you measure the economic output of a world long dead? And what does that number actually tell us? The scale of the task is immense. We don't have their treasury reports or their central bank statements. Calculating the GDP of an ancient empire is a monumental feat of historical detective work. Historians and economists have to become forensic accountants for a dead civilization. They scour the writings of contemporaries like Pliny the Elder, who complained about the massive wealth flowing out to India for silk and spices. They analyze archaeological evidence, the sheer volume of olive oil amphorae from Spain found at the bottom of the Mediterranean, the scale of ancient silver mines in Spain that operated for centuries, The tax records preserved on papyri in the dry sands of Egypt. It was the pioneering work of economists like the late Professor Angus Maddison that gave us the first comprehensive estimates. By piecing together these fragments of evidence, they've built a model, a best guess of the size and scope of the Roman economy. And the figure they arrived at is more than just a number. It's a key that unlocks a radical new perspective on the ancient world. It reveals a level of economic sophistication, integration, and sheer output that would not be seen again in Europe for over 1,000 years. This isn't just a story about ancient history. It's a story that challenges our very understanding of what a pre-industrial society was capable of. So what was the number? The answer is both humbling and utterly astonishing. At its absolute zenith, in the 1st and 2nd centuries AD, the estimated GDP of the entire Roman Empire was the equivalent of 20 to 30 billion sesterces. Now, that Roman number means very little to us today, so economists convert it into what they call 1990 international dollars, a stable metric for comparing economies across time. In those terms, the Roman GDP was approximately 20 to 30 billion dollars. 1990 int dollars. 20 to 30 billion dollars. Let that number sink in for a moment. The Roman Empire, that colossal entity which ruled over a quarter of humanity, from the Scottish Highlands to the Syrian deserts for 5 centuries, had an economy we measure in the tens of billions, not trillions. To put that in a modern context, the entire Roman economy was roughly on par with the annual economic output of a country like modern-day Denmark, or Chile, or the state of Louisiana. Roman Empire, circa 117 AD, is similar in height to bars labeled Denmark, Chile, and Louisiana. Now this can feel disappointing. How could an empire so vast and powerful be economically equivalent to a single small modern nation? This is where the most crucial part of the story comes in: GDP per capita, the average economic output per person. You see, while Rome's total GDP seems small to us, it was spread across a massive population of 60 to 75 million people. When you do the math, the average income for a Roman was roughly equivalent to the average income in Italy during the Renaissance in the year 1500. Let that sink in for a moment. The Roman Empire, that colossal entity which ruled over a quarter of humanity from the Scottish Highlands to the Syrian deserts for 5 centuries, achieved a standard of living for its average citizen that would not be matched again in the heart of its former territory for over 1,000 years. This single statistic shatters the myth that history was a simple linear progression from poverty to prosperity. Rome represented a high watermark of economic development that then receded for well over a millennium. This wasn't just a big economy, it was a rich economy for its time. It sustained a level of complexity, specialization, and urbanization that collapsed after its fall. The Forum was not replaced by something better, it was replaced by sheep pastures. The true astonishment isn't that Rome was poor by our standards, but that it was so incredibly rich by any standard that came before it, and for so long after it was gone. The engines of the Roman economy. So how did they do it? How did Rome build an economy that would stand unmatched for over a millennium? The first and most important engine was one we might overlook: agriculture. Forget Wall Street. The real power brokers of Rome were the landowners. 85 to 90% of the Roman population was involved in farming. The empire wasn't powered by coal or oil, but by wheat, olives, and grapes. The fertile lands of Egypt, North Africa, and Sicily were the empire's breadbasket. The annual grain fleet from Alexandria to Rome was a logistical operation as critical as any military campaign, feeding the city's million-strong population and keeping the masses content. This massive agricultural surplus is what freed up the rest of the population to be soldiers, engineers, merchants, and bureaucrats. The second engine was mining and metallurgy. If agriculture was the empire's body, mining was its beating industrial heart. The mines of places like Rio Tinto in Spain were not small-scale operations, they were industrial complexes. They produced a staggering 200 tons of silver per year at their peak. To put that in perspective, this one mining region alone produced more silver than the entire world would produce for centuries after Rome's fall. This river of precious metal did two things. It funded the state through taxes and conquest, and it fueled a stable, universally accepted coinage. The denarius became the US dollar of the ancient world, a trusted currency that greased the wheels of trade from Britain to Babylon. The third engine was trade and connectivity. The Romans didn't just conquer territory, they created an integrated, globalized market. The Mediterranean was Mare Nostrum, our sea, and it was largely free of pirates for the first time in history. Combined with an unparalleled network of durable roads, this created a safe, efficient system for moving goods. Wine from France, olive oil from Spain, glass from Syria, fine pottery from Italy, and luxuries like silk from China and spices from India all flowed freely within this vast economic zone. A merchant in Londinium could trade British tin for Syrian glassware with a common currency and under the protection of Roman law. Finally, there was the state itself. The Roman government was a massive economic actor. The annona, the free grain dole for Roman citizens, was one of the largest welfare systems in history. Massive public works projects, aqueducts, temples, baths, roads, employed thousands and stimulated local economies. And the army, 500,000 strong, was not just a fighting force, it was a massive consumer of goods, a builder of infrastructure on the frontiers, and a vehicle for spreading Roman economic habits and currency to the farthest corners of the empire. It was this powerful combination, agricultural surplus, mineral wealth, safe trade routes, and an active state that powered the astonishing Roman economic machine.
The limits and the decline. But this economic powerhouse was not invincible. For all its sophistication, the Roman economy was fundamentally pre-industrial, and it operated within strict, ultimately devastating limits. The most formidable of these was what economists call the Malthusian trap. In simple terms, when times were good, when the empire was stable and trade flowed, the population would grow. But eventually, that growing population would outstrip the agricultural surplus. There was no industrial revolution to boost productivity exponentially, so you'd hit a ceiling, and then any shock, a plague, a bad harvest, a war, would cause a catastrophic collapse in living standards. The economy could grow by getting bigger, but not by getting fundamentally more efficient per person. You can see the signs of strain as early as the 3rd century AD. The empire was running out of new lands to conquer, which meant the supply of fresh slaves and war booty, key drivers of its early growth, began to dry up. To pay its massive armies and bureaucracy, the state began to do something dangerously familiar. It debased the currency. They reduced the silver content in the denarius, slowly at first, then recklessly. It was the ancient equivalent of printing money. The result? Rampant inflation. A measure of wheat that cost 10 drachmas in the 2nd century Egypt cost over 200,000 drachmas just 2 centuries later. Trust in the currency evaporated, and the economy began to revert to barter. Then came the external shocks. The Antonine Plague in the late 2nd century, likely smallpox, may have killed 10% of the entire empire's population. This was a devastating blow to the tax base and the labor force. Later, the plague of Cyprian struck again. With a shrinking population, less trade, and a broken currency, the empire began to fragment. The final blow to the Roman economic system wasn't a single battle, but the slow, painful collapse of its integrated system. When the empire permanently split into eastern and western halves, and when the western trade routes became unsafe due to barbarian incursions, the single, vast economic zone that was the source of Rome's wealth simply ceased to exist. The Western Roman Empire didn't just fall politically, its economy disintegrated. The scale was lost. The complex system of specialized production, Spanish oil, Gallic wine, Egyptian grain, broke down into small, localized, and far poorer subsistence economies. The astonishing wealth of Rome didn't vanish in a day. It slowly leaked away as the lights of trade, commerce, and urbanization winked one by one across Europe, leaving the Dark Ages in their wake. The story of Rome's economy is ultimately a story of breathtaking achievement and a sobering lesson in fragility, reminding us that peace, stable money, and connectivity are the most precious economic assets of all.